And when we talk about police officers in particular, about 30 a year, 33 a year, take their own lives, which is one every 10 days.
We've ended up on the sofa as we're both trying to hold him down, luckily in handcuffs. All you hear is, boom, this dog fucking flies into the living room where we are. It starts attacking both of us.
If your attention breaks for 1 second, a knife might be pulled, and it might be the difference between you, one, stopping that knife being pulled, or it going in your neck.
There is a bodily chemical, I think, that is released from a dead person that affects the part of your brain that tells you you're hungry.
She threw a door at me, ripped it off its hinges, and threw a door at me. I've never had a door thrown at me before, so that sticks with me.
Thousands of people listen to this podcast every single month. However, only a fraction of those people actually follow and rate the podcast. Can I ask you a favor? If you want this podcast to keep on growing, if you want these stories, the advocacy for emergency services, and giving a voice to the emergency services to continue, please follow, like, and rate the podcast. It helps more than you know, and it helps the podcast to grow. And we will start the episode, and I hope you two are ready for the fun and banter and everything else we're going to encounter on this day. I really need to have less coffee before I start actually recording, because
more.
what I'll do is I just chat. Well, yeah, maybe have more, maybe need it on an IV drip. You know, podcast is 3 minutes long, and I've said 147,000 words in that period of time. But anyway, here we are once again. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jobs Fuck podcast, a place where emergency services can anonymously share their funny stories, rants, and accolades. Remember, you power this mission to make the emergency service workers feel heard and feel less alone. If you have a story to tell, you can email in at thejobpod25@gmail.com, or send me a message or a voice note on Instagram, the Jobs Fuck podcast, or at @jdartmore. That is the smoothest I've ever read that intro. And I'm off my tits on caffeine, so, you know, spice of life.
Congrats.
Today, I'm joined with the incredible dynamic duo who, between the two of them, have a full head of hair from the podcast of State 4. I'm joined by H and by CJ. So, gentlemen, how are you today?
Good, mate. Good,
I think
really
I'll
good.
let CJ go first on this one.
There was a bit of a delay then when I asked how you are, so I imagine you have to think about it a little bit. Like, how the fuck?
A little bit,
am I?
mate, yeah. I don't know how I'm feeling today.
Never know how to answer that question.
Well, tell me about State 4, lads.
Quite simply, the podcast is just a way of trying to be just two normal blokes, which I hope come through as we're chatting to you as well. It's just like having a conversation with your mate in the pub and chewing a fat, really. But we're just going to do that by discussing emergency services, mental health, current politics, things in the media, and have a bit of a laugh along the way as well. And just hopefully we can connect with people and maybe help, because sometimes some people don't want to talk, don't want to open up. But sometimes you do open up a little bit more to your mates in a pub, don't you? So
yeah, unless there's a panorama journalist sat there as well. No, I think it's ace, and I've listened to a couple of your episodes, and you do get into it, don't you? You get into the mental health, you get into things what you've dealt with, share some personal kind of stories, some personal accolades. I think it needs to be more, guys. I think more people need to open up about this stuff, because we know how extreme PTSD can be, complex PTSD, the absolute fucking lack of support available, despite all the emails and these welfare days and welfare vans that go around. When it comes to actual practical support, I've just from my own experience and also from anecdotally from what other people have said, there is definitely that lacking real support outside of a HR tick box. And one of the things what I've seen where a lot of people leave is due to feeling unsupported. It's not often people leave via an incident they've dealt with or the actual demands of the job. It's that compounding effect, what that can have on people, and the lack of support which can arise as a result of that. But no, I think it's ace. And just on another vein as well, it's really nice to hear two guys talking about it as well, because there's obviously the impact of men's mental health, which is a big issue at the moment, and also men wanting to take their own lives. And when we talk about police officers in particular, about 30 a year, 33 a year, take their own lives, which is one every 10 days, which is absolutely disgraceful. Move on to the story of the week now, which we were talking about the overzealousness of PSD, which seems to be quite prevalent at the minute. And I was chatting to a Bobby who worked in Yorkshire. I won't say specifically where, but I'm guessing you can guess. Some of the females had their hair down. The chief con was there, And all those officers were then facing gross misconduct for having their hair down.
Gross misconduct.
Gross misconduct, it has since been reduced to just misconduct. Now, rather than the chief con, the boss, walk over to those officers and say, "Hiya, girls, can you just put your hair up for us?" "Yeah, sir, not a problem, that's fine." They've then gone straight to disciplinary. So I remember having it in my old force as well, where the chief con used to walk around in high heels, and they sent one of the bag handlers through to one of the bag carriers who was in inspector, chief inspector, when we was all in training, to basically bollock us all for not having a shirt tucked in, for example, or having messy hair. And it's like, well, hang on, uniform standards apply to everybody. Why are you walking around in heels if you're saying that it's not okay to uphold, if you're not upholding uniform standards? Plus, then there's also the thing of, why haven't you come and told us yourself? And why haven't you said it at the time? Why have you sent your bag handler to now go and bollock us? And I just think that disconnects between the people just starting their careers and the people who would sit at the top of the ivory tower, who can't have that conversation, who would rather go straight to misconduct is completely wrong. But what's your guys' experience been like with PSD? Have you noticed they seem to be a lot more aggressive these days? Like, what's your thoughts? Do you really struggle with unwinding after a shift? You walk through the door completely exhausted, crawl into bed, you sit and scroll on your phone, getting annoyed that you have to be up in a few hours for that quick turnaround. Well, I have something that I've created that can help you, and it's completely free. Just click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen now to download my free support guide for shift workers. You will also receive daily emails filled with practical advice from mental health, burnout, boundaries with the job, and rest and recuperation. Take back control of your life today and stop letting a job take everything from you.
I think the change for me has been from when I started. There was a you had this concept of challenge. You challenged things, you communicated with someone, and it was basically that thing of, if you're talking to a kid, look, I'm going to tell you once. If I have to tell you again, it's going to be taken further. That's line manager. That's up the chain. And there was always that ethos of challenge it, tell someone about it. It's their fault if they carry on. Now, obviously, in terms of when you're looking at standards, I mean, it almost sounds ridiculous in some aspects. And you can I understand that, in a public facing situation where you have to have don your nipple hat or whatever, and you've got to look proper. You've got to look like you're the authority. But I think if you're gonna tell people to do something, you do it yourself as well. You keep the standards up yourself. You're not a power unto yourself.
There's two things along that sort of side of things, and sort of just following on from what CJ said. The challenge thing seems to have gone from actually challenging people to reporting them being a form of challenge. So if someone does something wrong, rather than actually say to them, mate, or if they say something maybe borderline, saying, "Oh, mate, that wasn't appropriate. Don't say it again." People don't do that anymore. There's no challenge in person phase, and it's turned into this by reporting them to PSD. That is a form of challenge, but sometimes all it needs is for you to have a chat. And on the sort of uniform side, basically, once you get above inspector, you're wearing smart uniform, not whatever the force wears. So, like you say, walking around in high heels, what if something kicks off and, a crime happens in front of them? High heels, whilst it looks professional, it sets that precedence. They're not going to get involved in stuff. They won't carry a kit belt or an equipment rig. And it tends to be the same thing with detectives. They'll wear smart uniform, but it'll be smart uniform that's not practical for if they are getting into a scuffle with someone. And they won't wear stab vests, they won't wear covert rigs or anything like that. So the appropriateness on uniform standards doesn't seem to apply for kit. So you have to look good, but it doesn't matter if you're equipped to deal with something. So a lot of people will say walk into town or drive into town to get lunch, and not take their kit with them, because if they take their kit with them, they're a police officer. But the same thing about applying, if you're on duty, you're expected to act as a police officer. So if something then happens, they're not equipped. So I just think they need to sort of maybe amend that to say, like in America, like American cops aren't allowed to travel between base stations without being equipped, without having their side on them. So perhaps in UK policing, we need to introduce something like that, where rather than this thing around you're not allowed to carry stuff like kit home, it's got to be authorized. If you're traveling between stations, wear your fucking kit. So it is that precedence of not getting involved in stuff. And like you say with the ivory tower thing, they're almost expecting not to get involved. And so they don't wear appropriate uniform, or they don't wear their kit. And I would be interested to see what would happen if, a fight happened in front of someone wearing smart shoes that slip off when they run, or high heels. And it'd be interesting to see.
Well, on this particular day where these officers were reprimanded, happened to be the same day that two GMP officers shot a terrorist outside of a synagogue. Now, in an environment where we need police officers and we need to expect those police officers to run towards danger and tackle people who wish to do serious harm to the public, surely we would want the police officers to feel respected and protected by the people above them. Standing there and not having the balls to say to them, put your hair up, and sending them straight to disciplinary gross misconduct, which was then brought down to misconduct. Oh, thank you very much. Does not set the precedent that we are here to protect you if you ever happen to one day need to pull a trigger of a gun. And it's like, I don't like that whole thing of you're never off duty. Granted, you are a representative of your work, of your police force, but it's like the Panorama documentary. Those officers were in a vulnerable position where they were expressing their views off duty. It isn't a reflection of the police force. And even if they had some views which people didn't necessarily like, does that impact their ability to do their job? I've obviously heard of officers when they're out round town and they're acting like a tit and they whip out the warrant card and go, well, guess what? I'm a Bobby. Like, no, that's not okay. At that point, you go in, I'm a cop and my actions are a direct reflection on what I'm doing. What do you think of that Panorama documentary?
It was a hard watch.
Some of those people shouldn't be in. Completely agree with that.
Exactly. And I'll never ever support officers that have certain views or act in a certain way. I do have to say that I think the conversation I was hearing and when I was watching it was very bravado, very macho. When you're talking about how someone's being fingerprinted or how they talk about having a
Mm.
roll around. And don't get me wrong, I don't think there's a copper out there that doesn't get a little bit of a buzz, a little bit of adrenaline of having a little bit of a scrap. No one's out to hurt someone. No one's out to go above and beyond what they need to be doing. We're there to arrest someone. We're there to take hold of someone, take someone's liberties away. That in itself is already a big thing. But I think for me, watching that, the thing that made it difficult was to see that, for one, those people made it through and were allowed to work within a police force, but there is no vetting process for thoughts and opinions. But
Mm.
I think for me, I think the one main thing, I think I might have said it to H, and I think I said those conversations, although shouldn't have happened, they were only public because someone had integrated themselves in and recorded those conversations. They were not public facing. They were not for the public to hear. They were personal, trusted, confidential conversations, regardless of their views. They weren't donning uniform, walking into the streets and going, "These are my opinions." There was an element of trust.
Well, he even says it in the documentary. He says, "Oh, they weren't saying things to me, so I had to probe deeper, and I had to,
You have to bait them.
yeah." Like, So you're setting the groundwork for them to say something inappropriate. Because I don't know about you, but I wouldn't walk up to a colleague and say, "Oh, that thing last night, that was a bit dodgy."
I had a message off somebody. Hello, I am a serving officer who worked at that custody suite with those officers. I also went to the pub with this journalist. Every single one of his questions were extremely leading, baiting you into saying ridiculous things. Looking back on it now, all I can think about is how his behavior influenced everyone else's. I didn't show up on the expose probably because I'm not a shit person. I commend his plan, sort of, to root out the bad people from the front line, but his way of baiting people doesn't sit right with me. And then, of course, thank you for everything you do. You are showing that we have some bad officers, but not everyone's bad. I think that's the main thing. Like they went into that documentary with an agenda. We need to find people who are racist, homophobic, sexist, misogynist, etc. Because of course that fits in with the general narrative that all cops are bastards. And nothing sells papers and nothing creates attention on a documentary than seeing police officers do bad things. What we have to remember is that a news organization like the BBC or ITV or anything like this, they're a business first. Telling the news is secondary. That's just how they make money. They're a business. Their goal is to survive and to make money. They're going to use the most provocative sort of things possible. Now, out of 9 months of being with these officers for 12-hour shifts, 4 or 5 times a week, you're telling me that you could only find, and not just even in work either, you had to go outside of work, get people drunk, use leading questions, extract information. You managed to find a handful of people who had less than savory views or made comments which weren't professional.
Mm.
I would say that's actually not a bad reflection on the police force as a whole. If it was a 5-part series of 2-hour long episodes and it was jam packed with 10, 20, 30 different cops all saying reprehensible things, then okay, you could say we've got a problem. What this person's done and what the BBC have done is they've cherry picked and edited this footage in such a way to show the police in the worst light possible in order to fulfill and push out an agenda. And that agenda is rage bait, it's controversy, and it's to make money. And they did a very good job of it because that's their job. They are experts at doing this. I thought it was very telling getting messages like that saying that it is an agenda. They know exactly what they're doing. And it massively, and the ironic thing as well is the day that happened and it came out, the next day there was a terrorist attack. No one was calling the cops bastards then when they were shooting dead a terrorist.
Wow, you say that.
I put it on my X and I got a mix of different things. But then again, some people who comment on the police don't have a fucking clue what they're talking about half the time. So this video was sponsored by my best-selling police memoir, The Jobs Fuck Secret Diary of a Police Officer. After 10 years in the police service, I finally left and I decided I need to speak out. This book does a deep dive into police corruption, the real reason why the police force is falling apart, and things you will never hear in the mainstream media. You can check it out in the link in the description of this video. You could also grab some merchandise and support me on Patreon. And now, without further ado, enjoy the video.
Journalists and news channels and stuff that seem to be more focused on the fact that the officer shot through the suspect and hit a door behind him than
I've heard that.
than the fact that they stopped him. You know,
If he didn't pull the trigger, he wouldn't have hit somebody. But would you rather him say, right, just move away from that door for a second because I might hit someone when I shoot you? No. What does a terrorist do? They want collateral damage. They're going to stand in public places because it makes them less likely to be shot. Now, those officers had an incredibly hard decision to make, and they made, in my opinion, the right decision. But it was between a rock and a hard place. It was the devil in the deep blue sea. If you don't shoot, something awful is going to happen. You're going to be looking at gross negligence. You do shoot, something awful is going to happen. You're going to get hauled over the coals. And I mean, I'm happy that there's officers out there who feel confident enough to actually take up that vocation because I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't stand there with a gun and shoot someone. What, pretend to get locked up for murder for doing your job?
but it is also interesting to see the media focus on the fact that two innocent people were hurt, one killed by police stopping a terrorist incident. You know, I think I've said to CJ before, it shows the disparity between different incidents involving the police. So the shooting of Charles Jimenez.
Is that the guy who jumped the barrier
He
in the
didn't jump
tube
the
station?
barrier. Yeah, there's a documentary on
Right.
Netflix now. on the 7/7 bombings, and it goes into it, and basically there's a load of false information where it was the police that jumped the barrier, not this guy. It's a whole
Right,
load
okay.
of fuck ups basically, and they basically just ran into a carriageway and shot an innocent man. So you look at that one where no one was prosecuted, compared to, I'm not going to name him, but NX121. He was sent to the Old Bailey, to Crown Court, for shooting someone that was trying to hurt them, that probably would have killed them.
You'd been involved in the firearms incident a few days before.
So why is there this disparity between that and the officers that have been involved in this GMP incident? I don't think they've been served papers yet. I don't think they've been suspended, and they've not been named.
I think, like, as well, I think you shouldn't have cops that have the authority on them, the weapons on them to go and potentially end someone's life, going into a situation thinking, who's recording me? What's going to happen from PSD? They literally should be going into these instances with the sole focus of focusing on this job. But I can guarantee you, they're all going in going, wonder who's going to be investigation next. Am I going to have to shoot someone, and how long's that going to be for?
The last thing that cop wants to do is pull that trigger.
Exactly. But there's no cop out there, I guarantee you, that goes to an incident and doesn't have multiple things going on in their head rather than directly at the job. Constantly thinking, if I say the wrong thing, if I do the wrong thing, grab someone the wrong way, because I'm involved in a fast-moving, fast-paced incident. Whereas, like, as you saw on some of the footage from that synagogue incident, not only are those two firearms cops walking up and dealing with him, they're also moving members of the public back who think it's a fucking jolly to go and have a look and see what's going on. And that one bloke that had to be dragged out the way by someone because he wanted a nice little peek through the gate, and you're like, they just need to be able to do their fucking job at the end of the day. And that is, no, it's not the case at the moment.
I've reviewed body-worn footage. I've seen instances where two cops have stopped searching somebody and then they just pull out a fucking knife or a screwdriver and start going at the cops. So when you stop searching somebody, your attention has to be on them. Yes, you've got a cover officer, but both your attention is really on that person. In particular, if you're single crewed and you happen to stop search somebody, which is an entire another subject completely. But if you've got someone, what you're actually stopping him under? What's your call number? Where do you work? What's your station? What's this? What's that? If your attention breaks for 1 second, a knife might be pulled, and it might be the difference between you one stopping that knife being pulled, or it hitting your body armor, or it going in your neck. Members of the public who do that are the first to criticize the police when there's too many knives on the street. Okay, well, let the police do the job. You don't need to record it for your fucking YouTube channel. Right, rants and stories now. So if you do have a story to tell, we love this bit. Send it through at the Jobs Fuck Podcast on Instagram, or email thejobpod25@gmail.com. Okay, so the first one here, this is from the NHS, and I'm happy to hear I'm getting a few more NHS stories through. So this one, not sure if this counts as an NHS funny story, but it's an embarrassing nurse story. So in 2021, I was working in A&E. After a grueling night shift in resource, night number 4, I went to take off my scrubs and put on my civvies. I was the only one in the changing room because I'd had a major trauma just before handover, so I was late finishing. I quickly got changed, tied up my laces, zipped up my coat. I left the changing room. I left the female changing room. A male colleague in a more senior position was just exiting the men's changing room. He asked me if I was okay, asked me if I was forgetting anything. I thought this was odd, and I just laughed it off. He was laughing as I went to walk through the main door that leads to the A&E corridor. He stopped me in my tracks and shouted back. He told me he couldn't let me leave dressed how I was, and it turns out I'd completely skipped putting on my trousers in the step of getting changed. My backside was out, and I had no idea at all. That sounds like a rough shift.
Oh,
Bless.
Just walking out in your unmentionables. I mean, to be fair, nurses work goddamn hard. I mean, cops work hard, but nurses, they don't get a break. So walking out in your underwear, about to walk through a busy A&E, like, I mean, imagine if no one told her and she got in a car and she was like, "Oh shit."
I've just made it through that A&E waiting area.
I did see some video. I think it was a nurse again. She posted her own Ring doorbell footage of her walking to her car when she's been working like loads of shifts in a row. She's just in her pants. She goes, oh fuck, and like runs back in, realizing she's not worn anything.
I mean, sleep deprivation is dangerous. It's so dangerous because, especially in things like policing and the fire service, and in nursing, you are making decisions which can be life or death, not necessarily for the person, but for the public or for yourself or for your colleagues. You're driving a car at 80, 90 miles an hour through a 40-mile-an-hour thing, and you've barely slept, or you are. Like I said before, stop searching somebody. Your eyes have to be on the thing. Or if you're administering medication to somebody, which if you get the dose wrong can kill them, if
Yeah,
you've not slept, it's like being drunk or worse than being drunk. Um, so I think more emphasis needs to be put on the actual welfare of frontline workers when it comes to their rest periods. So here's one. Why do we get 8 days of personal safety training followed by a 2-day refresher a year, and that's enough? I feel it should be 2 full training days every cycle and a paid hour per week in self-defense. Shift patterns mean I can't commit to a proper martial arts class in my own time, which would improve my fitness and confidence should the situation begin to escalate.
that's a difficult one because there's already so much training that police have to do, and it's the police becoming a jack of all trades. I think if you set aside per set, per cycle, whatever it is, to do officer safety training, I think that sets the precedence that you're expecting conflict. And okay, police do deal with conflict, but it sort of almost sets the example that that's what we expect from the public. For we need to do more regular safety training because we're expecting to be assaulted. um
But officer assaults are going up.
yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but
I think it should be incorporated into being in the police, and you should be taught how to protect yourself. And if you want to do it outside of work, which there is always a possibility, you can, there is ways of making time for it. And I always used to think that I've got a little boy, I've got a life, I've got the police. Where am I fitting in breathing? But it's all about making that time. At the end of the day, you are going out there, as you say. Okay, it's not great to think of the expectation that you're always going to go out and get hurt, but let's face it, coppers were going out and getting hurt. And so for me to actually have that incorporated in your job, to be told we take your safety seriously, so we're going to train you properly, for me, priceless.
I agree, mate. And I think when it comes to, it doesn't need to be that you're learning kung fu. It can just be, okay, somebody gets you on the floor, how to get up. Somebody is resisting, how to do a leg sweep, how to, just basic takedowns, judo, that sort of thing. We're not trying to teach. We're not trying to make cops martial arts experts, but you know, unless you come from a kind of martial arts background and you have that muscle memory, 2 weeks at the start of your training doing the get back, the strikes and stuff, it's not really going to teach you very much. You're just going to you're going to default back to what you were doing before. And I know what you're saying, H, in the sense of we don't want officers to think that they're going to be coming up with conflict all the time. But if you're capable of defending yourself, it means you're less likely to have to, because you have the confidence to challenge somebody properly. Because it's that saying, isn't it? It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. It's better to have all the training and knowledge and that self-confidence that you can defend yourself if something starts to escalate, so that you're not fearful of something escalating and then you're then caught out with someone trying to, seriously hurt you. When it comes to the training aspect itself, I think we get trained too much on bullshit, which we're never going to use. My old block, what we used to do was on a training day, if we didn't have any particular training on, rather than trying to fill it with some shite, we'd go to a local gym and we'd have booked it out for like a hit workout, which means you're getting fit and you're working with your team and you're working together. And then maybe go out for like dinner or something, you go for food somewhere. They were always the best ones. And it certainly seems for me, when I was leaving it, that massively got pulled back, and then you were just sat there watching the PowerPoint. No one gave a shit about section to nick something from Ben Pearson, to learn section 39 of who gives a fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think we should definitely invest more in our officers' safety and fitness.
Well, there's that
Personally,
thing recently, wasn't there? The uniform survey that cops are buying their own uniform because it's not fit for purpose and not comfortable. I know that I bought a different handcuff pouch because the one they give you is this really thick, firm leather one, and I bought like a fabric one where that was easier for me to quickly undo them. I wasn't having to furk around the button not coming unstuck and stuff like
Mm.
that. I had a different handcuff pouch, and
you
that's
ever
not.
handcuffed yourself to your seatbelt?
No. Did
Don't
you?
lie.
A
I
few
haven't.
times. There's one here which, why do we not get trained on how to deal with a dog if a dog's trying to attack you? Because there's a lad who's written in saying he's recently been mauled by an XL bully and he's had to have 2 surgeries because he didn't know how to deal with it. I think that needs to be a thing. You go into people's houses, locking somebody up.
Everyone knows the basic, don't they? Finger in the butt.
Apparently that doesn't work. I asked a dog handler and he said, no, all what happens is you got a dog attacking you and your finger's up its ass.
Yeah, so I know that I raised it during first aid, and I said, you're covering catastrophic bleeds, you're covering stab wounds. I was like, I've been attacked by a dog. It hurts. I had the back of my leg torn open by a staffy when I was like 16. It hurts. And like you say, if you get attacked by a dog, do you know what to do? And I know that they covered it in our taser training about. If you are attacked by a dog, what would you do? And a lot of people are, oh, well, tase it. Okay, but there's two things that can happen if you tase a dog. You have a really docile dog that's sort of, it's just been tased, so it's not very active, or you've got a really pissed off dog
Very
that
angry
you've
dog.
just tased. Yeah. So they covered that in my taser course, and it was like, oh, okay, that's actually a fair example. And I saw it on, I think it was Police Inceptors, actually, one of the newer ones. They have trank guns for dogs. The only
That's good.
sort of caveat to that is like, obviously you've got to be trained to use the guns, and not only that, but you have to call a 24-hour on-call vet for authority to use the trank fluid.
Yeah, it's hanging off my arm. Is it all right?
Yeah. I think
I think there'd be
yeah,
a workaround for that. I'm not gonna
pre-planned.
lie.
Yeah, so I don't know what would happen if someone got attacked by a dog, but like in the Police Inceptors thing, whatever it was, they went to like a house with an aggressive dog, so they basically just tranked it from the garden and waited for it to fall asleep. But yeah, like you say, if you've got to do an on-call thing, can you use it without getting the on-call and then just get them to ratify it later?
we had it. We went to somebody's house. It was an emergency call. He had a knife to his throat. We went in. My mate tasered him. Taser didn't work properly, but it was enough to get him to drop the knife. As we're wrestling with him, his big ass German Shepherd runs through the back and bites him on the ass. Needless to say, we wound him up quite mercilessly about that for a little bit, which was good fun. But I mean, thankfully, the lad who got bit he was a big lad and a dandy dude, and he managed to grab the dog and chuck it outside. But if he didn't get that dog under control, it would have been absolute carnage.
Talking about dogs attacking us is, to be fair, it's quite it's a mix. It was quite funny, but also like a bit of a God, you can rely on your colleagues. And it was we'd gone to this address. It was the domestic call, and I think both parties were separate by the time we got there. It took a little bit of a while to get to the door. So we've gone in. You do your whole. You chat to her. I'll chat to him, and eventually, information was he caused criminal damage. He's hit her or something like that. So, luckily, in my head, I've gone. I'm going to cuff him straight away. There's been violence. He's going in bracelets. That would be a saving grace, because he decided 5 minutes in he didn't like my colleague when he eventually came downstairs, started kicking off. We've ended up on the sofa as we're both trying to hold him down, luckily in handcuffs. All you hear is boom, this dog fucking flies into the living room where we are. It starts attacking both of us. I've I can't get to my red button, so I've hit his red button, and then the world came through that door, and it was brilliant. Because even I'd told H once, I said the inspector runs through, he's got no kit belt, no stab vest, he's jumped in that car, and he's got to us. Like sergeants that had turned up, there was officers from everywhere, and yeah, it was like fuck, that was quick. But like ultimately, like this dog, it wasn't the biggest dog in the world, but it was going for us. And if he wasn't in handcuffs, yeah, we literally, I think both of us have each, in turn, donkey kicked backwards against this dog to try and get it off us. Yeah, interesting, but it was feel good at the end, I must admit.
The dog's just protecting its owner, isn't it? It doesn't know
Yeah,
that, what's going on. It's just going, who's this bald bastard who's coming in, fucking dragging my owner away?
I think there is something about dogs not liking high vis as well. So a lot of the police forces who have like high vis tack vests or stab vests, they get attacked more often by dogs because dogs don't like high vis.
Well, I think it's because they can see it better because dogs see in different colors to us, don't they? So, I think like green is really bright to dogs. I might be wrong there. I'm sure I'll get a message off a vet going, "You don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Dartmoor." And by the way, your glasses look stupid. Speaking of glasses, I've got somebody emailed me this in, and I said I'd read it on this. It's a bit of a longer one, but I'm more than happy to read it out. So that's why I've got my glasses on, because without them, I'm blind. Okay, so evening, Jay. I've held off writing this email because part of me thought, why bother? Nothing will change, whilst the other part of me just wants to rant and scream to the heavens. It goes without saying, but of course, keep this anonymous. I apologise now for how lengthy this rant will be. I've been in the police now for 7 years, just over a year as a PSSO, than 6 as an officer. To put this bluntly, I've never felt worse mentally than I do now. My anxiety grew as I started the job due to workload, response, and completing my diploma. Thank God I missed the degree route. I'm currently on anti-anxiety medication, which more the most part works. In the past 2 years, it's been in the in the past 2 years, it has steadily grown worse thanks to the job. Um, I'm single crewed for 99% of the time, and luckily my area is low risk, low crime area, and my station only has a few officers, but they're very laid back and none of us are ladder climbing snakes. The reason it has grown worse, which I'll outline, are no doubt mirrored across the country. Overall, policing has been skewed by public pressures, wokeism, PR pushing SLT, and people rushing to climb the ranks with no skills, no motivation, besides a symbol on their shoulder, and will stab a colleague in the back without batting an eye. I start with poor leadership, poor policing. I start with poor leadership equals poor policing. SLT has fallen way behind what modern policing needs. They are so focused on statistics, outcomes, and positive arrests that officers are so scared to make the wrong decision for fear of losing their job. In my force, you have to have an inspector's authority to justify not arresting somebody at a domestic incident, even if you can separate the parties and do other safeguarding outcomes. You arrest the offender and they get released the next day. Going home, even more pissed off with their partner over an argument that got heated that could have been solved by a night's sleep on a mate's sofa. The focus on the degree program opens up policing to people lacking life skills and wanting a free degree, when in the past you would have teams of ex-forces and people with real life experience who tackle all the issues of the world. Now we are stuck with pretentious students who don't know the world but think they know better because they're getting a degree. No word of a lie, I had to teach one of my students to look both ways crossing a road because he nearly got hit by a car. Response are constantly under threshold, and officers are being sent for attachments on months on end to sometimes even larger workloads. A friend of mine told me that he currently has 40 crimes in his workload in a high risk domestic unit. Um, how can one officer effectively safeguard 40 people? Response need an overhaul and be tenured for 5 years minimum. No jumping the ranks after finishing probation. Keep the numbers on response, have better welfare in a place for officers, and make senior leadership actually go out on shift during nighttime economy at least once a month so they can see policing on the front line and see what shit we have to face. This leads to my next point of public pressures. For too long now, UK policing has become too soft, pandering, and PR centric. Of course, we want the scumbag officers out of our force, but now to bring every officer in front of professional standards for the smallest mistakes and say it's gross conduct. Even Longcastle lost his job for calling someone a little bitch. Formal warning at most, job loss, absolutely not. I'm in constant fear, which is probably just my anxiety of being brought into the office or served papers because what I did didn't align with the public expectation of policing. I'm sorry, I'm here to get rid of drug users, abusive arseholes, and make the town I work in safer. If I'm blunt, seen as rude in tense situations, then I'm sorry, but I'm human, and I need to effectively manage a situation. And if I need to raise my voice to do so, then so be it. I had a colleague brought up in a scrutiny panel because he told someone to shush during a search. So really need a scrutiny panel for that one. I've had professional standards complaints from members of the public who didn't like the fact that their non-crime was no longer investigated, and I wouldn't bow to their ridiculous needs, even to the point where she lied in her complaint saying I went to school with her other party, but no repercussions for lying members to the public. I'll get rid of this bit. I fear that we've succumbed to public pressures so much to the point that we can never bounce back. I saw a video the other day where an officer approached someone because he called somebody else a muppet, and apparently that was a public order offence. What's next? Arrested for not smiling to your neighbour. I no doubt that I'm not alone when I say with modern I know I have no doubt I'm not alone when I say that this is how modern policing is in the UK. I fear losing my job daily and my name plastered on some news article. You mentioned a little bit here. I'm sorry again for the rant. If it does make the podcast, let me know what episode. Still catching up. All the best. Thank you for giving us a voice. So quite an impassioned email. That's an officer who frankly wants to do their job, and this ties back to the overzealous PSD, what we were talking about before. There's an officer there who clearly wants to do a job and provide the best for the public and provide the best service possible, but he's so scared of being a cop and doing what a cop needs to do that there's this issue what they're having where they're constantly in fear of getting sacked for doing their job because of how they might speak to somebody or they might make a decision which the PSD the SLT don't agree with. But over to you guys. I mean, mental health issues with policing, this is by all means, guys, this is your bag 100%.
Do you know what? I've never heard something so well said in my life from such what wow. I'll be honest, that was absolutely incredible to hear. But I think one of my main points is the only point I'll stick to, and I'll hand it to Hagen because he's obviously got something to say. But is I think nowadays the notion of public perception, I think, is so archaic, it's unreal, because there is so many different perceptions of what police should and shouldn't do, what we're doing wrong, what we're doing right, that I think realistically we have to set our own standards and our own standards of how we deal with things. Because like you say, at the end of the day, I remember when you would talk to someone, when you would engage with someone in a situation, if someone's going, oh, fuck you, you fucking dickhead, you're not going to go, oh, please, sir, would you just listen to what I'm doing at once as I do my job? No, you're going to go, listen, mate, shut the fuck up, I'm dealing with you. You use the language which that person will understand, and you will get your point across. And I think that in itself, I think massively, the way that we've got our hands tied is what's affecting a lot of mental health, because where you are constantly thinking about your responses, thinking about how you talk to people, how you act, what you're going to look like on camera, did you get it right? And I think there is no outlet for officers that have got all this internal compression of their mental health and their physical health, that because they're working constantly, there's no outlet for it outside of the police. And also you can't deal with something with common sense and in your own personality because you are tied, your hands are tied, and you constantly are thinking about, as I say, that the other side to it, that am I going to get dragged through the fucking coals? So yeah, that resonated massively with me. That hearing that, wow.
The degree route myself wasn't a choice. I just happened to join at the wrong time. I was staff before and joined up as a PC, and it happened to be when they were only doing the degree thing. Never used it, probably not going to use it. I've got a degree. It's a degree in policing. It was one of the worst decisions. I think it's College of Policing who made it, or government, or something. I don't even
It
know.
would have come down from government, but the college after implement it. I didn't do the degree. I did the YIPL dip, and you have like a portfolio to fill out and everything else. Um, and not once when I've been scrapping with somebody and I've had someone next to me who's helping me, have I thought, I wonder if they've got a degree or not. No, it's how well can you talk to people? Like CJ said, you use a language which people use back. And I found you get a lot more respect that way. And you break that barrier between I've got this uniform on, you're a member of the public, and we go, all right, we're both just members of the public here. We're both on a level, both talking to each other. All right, you've called me an arsehole. Shut up, you prick. And sometimes people laugh, don't they? They're like, fuck it, you just called me. Yeah, I did, because you're acting like a twat. What are you doing? And it breaks that barrier. And the cops who I found who get assaulted the most are the cops who can't speak to people. They're the cops who come in like a bull. I'm the police. You will do what I say. And they're not relatable in any kind of way. They can't show that, they can't break down that barrier. Now, I've been locking people up before who really didn't want to get locked up. And because you speak to them like a human being and you treat them with that bit of dignity and respect, and you empathize with them and go, listen, I know you don't want to get lifted. You're gonna have, unfortunately, that's what happens. I had one lad turn around to me once and went, "Oh, I can't be asked getting nicked." Oh, you can't be asked, can you? Just can't be asked dip in the shop to get some milk. Can't, all right, can't be asked. But but there's a time for that professionalism. There's a time for to watch what you're saying. It completely depends on who is sat opposite you and who's talking to you. Now that dynamic changes massively if you've got somebody with a mobile phone in your face and they're hearing you have an argument or use more crass language, shall we say, with somebody. That then gets clipped. That gets posted on TikTok. You're the biggest bastard walking.
Yeah, I mean, to give you a specific example about the like, speak how you would expect, speak reasonably. If it gets the job done, it gets the job done. You're not going into like a victim of domestic abuse and going, why are we here, you whatever. It's generally in response to someone else. So I went to this job before, which was, it came in as like a not a kidnap, but someone being held within a flat, and it basically turns out it wasn't that at all. Two girls had, I say girls because I think they were like 18. Um, they'd come, they'd gone clubbing in London together. They lived together, and they'd met lads when they were out. Now, one of the women um, went home with this lad that she met and left her friend in London.
Right.
Classy. And when they'd come home, they'd had a massive argument, and basically the person that owned the flat, whereas the other person was like paying them rent, they'd obviously had an argument. So one of them was there and didn't want the other one to be there anymore. So we turn up, and I'm with a colleague, and he goes and talks to I think the calm woman, and I had the shouty woman. Now, all that the woman wanted, there weren't any offences. All that the woman wanted was her rent from her friend and for her friend to leave. Now, her friend was screaming in my face, and I think I got to one point where I just went, right, shut the up. um, like literally shouted in her face. Now I don't get angry. CJ can attest to that. I'm not an angry person. So for me to shout at someone, but it did the job, and she was almost like speechless. And I just went, right, she wants some rent for you. You can sort that out later down the line. How about we drop you home since you live 2 towns over, where like her parents' house or whatever, and that did the job.
Mm.
Like, if I'd been like, oh, please miss, would it have done anything? Probably not. But the sort of funny part to that is, after I shouted in her face, shut the fuck up, my colleague comes over, hands his work phone to me and goes, Stop. And her warnings were like bad, like GBH and ex-boyfriend bad.
Right, okay.
And I've just got in her face and shouted at her to shut the fuck up. I was like, oops.
But you've got to you
You do.
sometimes like I mean, I always used to say you start down here because then you can go up there. If you go in straight away like that, there's
Yeah.
not really much place to go. So you got
There's
to
no
start
escalation.
further down. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to
Yeah.
increase your level of force maybe the way you're talking to people.
Assertiveness.
Um, yeah, assertiveness. That's a good way to put it.
Mm.
I used to have a lad who he was a fucking nightmare around. Oh, he just used to get pissed and smash things up. He was an absolute. Oh, he's a right bellend.
Mm.
And whenever I used to hear his name come over the radio, I used to always shout up and go, "Oh, I'll go speak to him. I've got a good relationship with him."
Mm.
Because a lot of the other bobbies who used to go used to be like, you know, they didn't have that relationship with him because I used to speak to him like a, you know, like a human being. I used to call him a knobhead. I used to call him a bellend, and he'd be like, "Oh, fucking hell, you here again?" It's like, yeah, because you twat. What you doing this time? Like, you're gonna get fucking
Mm.
nicked now. Why have you smashed that window? Oh, I've just got problems. Yeah, you have. You're an alcoholic, but I didn't. Oh, no, that's that's more than I should probably mention
Mm.
to him. But it's all about communication, and communication doesn't have to be being nice and it doesn't have to be being nice and nicer. It doesn't have to be aggressive. It's what situation, what kind of communication does the situation call for? And this goes back to what I was saying before about officers being trained a bit more in martial arts, is that you have the confidence to escalate the situation if it requires it because you
Mm.
know if it does go pop, you're confident enough to take care of yourself. If you are an officer who's terrified of conflict because you're not used to it, you never had it, you can't you either will not be authoritative in the slightest because you don't want it to escalate, therefore you're not the presence in the room controlling things, they are, or you'll go in too hard, and when that doesn't work and it goes crazy, you find yourself wrestling with somebody who you know you're unable to look after yourself. So I think it all ties in together. But my advice to the officer is you're not alone. Do the best job you possibly can. And as long as you can justify how you speak to somebody, or if you have to get hands on, as long as you can justify and you go, in that situation, I felt this was the right thing to do, you can't go far wrong. You'll
I'd
always
get
get people
notebooks and
recording you.
statements as a backup.
Yeah,
If you're gonna shout at someone, um, or use
don't hide it.
force,
Say, I
like
called him a
not
twat
yeah,
or I bollocked him.
non-conventional use of force, because you are allowed to use non-conventional use of force. You know, if someone's coming at you with a knife, you're gonna go get back, or you're gonna boot them in the chest. Me, I'm gonna boot them in the chest because that's what would be
And then
effective.
shout, get back.
And then shout get back. Yeah, but that
I
that
use a
wouldn't.
spear technique with
Yeah,
my hand,
Yeah.
with my
yeah,
foot.
yeah. That, you know, I'd rather, if you had to be stabbed, I'd rather be stabbed in the leg than the chest or the arm. Not that anyone would want to be, but do you know what I mean? Like that's non-conventional. You're not trained to do it. So there's no issue with you doing it, but write it up, justify it in a pocket notebook.
Don't
Yeah.
try and hide something because all it takes is if you try and hide something you've said
No.
or something you've done, all it takes is for someone to find out it's captured on a body worn or it's a video on social media or somebody else has said, I saw PCH elbow him in the face. And you go, I never did that. Right, okay,
Mm.
now we've got some discrepancy here. So now someone's not being truthful. Just be blatantly honest. And as long as you can justify it, you can't go far wrong. So here's one a little bit different. I went to a death. This is the first death one I've had. I normally get quite a few through.
Mm.
I went to a death, even though it was non-suspicious. We had to get major crime in to the scene as there were bits of body all over the place. Whilst waiting for them to come out, I went outside and ate my lunch. A member of the public put in a complaint about me saying I was disrespectful and how could I possibly eat when there was a dead person in the house. Even better, it's even better when they've been there that long that the dog has started eating them too.
Oh,
Yeah, that might have been the one
nice.
recently. I saw a news story about some lady that her dogs had started eating her. So the neighbours obviously called the police, but they'd already started eating her, which is, yeah, gross. I mean,
I believe a dog will wait a few days. I think a cat. I think a cat will have you straight away.
I think a cat was
Yeah,
already plotting a
yeah.
murder, to be honest.
Yeah, I think me and CJ spoke about it on our podcast as well. You know, if you're in a living room of a flat, and you've got a packed lunch, you're waiting for coroners or undertakers, whoever it is, to turn up. What you're supposed to wait for hours or however long it takes them, and not eat if you're hungry. You know, not look after your welfare. No, you find a seat somewhere and you have a seat, and you eat. You know, does it matter that you're sat opposite a dead body? Can members of the public sort of comprehend that you're looking at someone that's dead and decaying whilst eating a sandwich? Probably not.
Thing is, as well, like you deal with so many. Death's never bothered me.
No.
Like I've been to a few. I've been to not really messy ones. I was never thankful. I never went to any child deaths or anything like that, thankfully. But I know people that have.
Yeah.
But I've been to quite a few nasty ones, and never bothered. Some officers really didn't like going, whereas I always just shout up. I think I went to like 4 in a week. Like
Yeah.
yeah. I think I've been to a couple in a day before, but it never bothered me. And I used to get very hungry afterwards because you're there for a little while, aren't you?
Mm.
And I used to be like, right, should we go get a Macca's? And my colleague would be there, like, are you taking the piss? Like, yeah, I'm hungry.
There is a bodily chemical, I think, that is released from a dead person that affects the part of your brain that tells you you're hungry. So that smell or that chemical that it's releasing makes you hungry. Because I used to go to the service, like motorway services. I'd have like Yorkshire pud. I'd have like wraps, Nando's, everything Chinese afterwards. I was absolutely famished, like, and I could never explain it. And then someone said to me one day, "That's why," and I was like, "Okay, so I'm not
Oh, no,
psychopathic."
you are.
Like,
You are.
Maybe.
But
yeah.
interesting statistic, actually. When you think of psychopaths, you think of like, Ted Bundy, serial killers and stuff. The majority of psychopaths are actually in quite high stress professions because as a psychopath, you are cool under pressure, you can make decisions, you can detach yourself from a situation, you don't have a lot of empathy. So a lot of really high functioning psychopaths are very powerful lawyers, the big businessmen, surgeons, and a lot of them are police officers. So there is a high if you was to look at the psychiatric report of certainly frontline police officers and ambulance paramedics and stuff, you would find that quite a lot of them are quite high on the psychopathic spectrum. I did a test. I'll put the link actually in this video because it's really useful. And I did a test, and out of 33 being like absolute 100% catatonic psychopath, um, and I think 12 being the national average, because everybody has some psychopathic traits. It's like everyone has some narcissistic traits. It's whether it becomes too much, where it becomes detrimental. I think I scored 2021, which makes sense if I was a frontline officer for quite a long time because of the things what you have to deal with. It takes a certain mentality to be able to deal with that.
A lot of cops do that as a defense mechanism. You know, like you going to 2 sudden deaths in a day, 4 in a week. If you allowed all of that to affect you, then you're thinking about it on rest days. So you almost become emotionally numb. And is that a psychopathic trait or is that just a defense mechanism? I think it's a really thin line.
If you generally don't feel the empathy, then you wouldn't need to be a defense mechanism. I think if you pull up that wall so it doesn't affect you, I used to put it's called like, oh, you put on job mode, right? I'm in job mode now,
Yeah.
and then I'm back to being me. The difficulty is where you can't let go of job mode or where job mode starts seeping into ordinary life. So this is a thing with PTSD and CPTSD is because you go, I'm not dealing with that, like emotionally, that's still there, that
Mm.
still needs to come out. And unless you address it and deal with it through therapy or counseling or self-help, it will bleed out and it will manifest in another way. And this is when you get people who can become quite unwell, or they find that they're having night terrors, or they might start self-medicating. So yeah, I think it's so no issues whatsoever with the guy eating, but maybe if it was a particularly bad one, maybe you might need to talk to somebody about it because of course these things can accumulate and come out. So, gentlemen, we are now moving on to our cake find segment of the show. So, By all means, if you have any interesting cake finds you would like to share, you can send them through via the links in the description. But here's one. I came off an early from Change Around where we did a set of nights and then go into an early shift and then into rest days. I got a call at 7:30 from my sergeants, and this is how the conversation went. Me, hello, Sergeant, you all right? Where are you? Me, I'm in bed, Sergeant. Sergeant, why? Me, it's a rest day. Sergeant, no, it's not. It's your early shift, you fucking dickhead. Me, oh shit, I thought it was a rest day. I'm getting up. Sergeant, don't forget the donuts. Oh, it was also his birthday as well. So we had to bring in double cakes, one for oversleeping and one because it was his birthday.
That's a bit. It's that other side of it as well, where you are actually on rest days and you wake up in a fucking panic, thinking that you're late for your shift, and it takes about 20 minutes to get ready.
Or you realise, I
Yeah.
remember ringing up my mate once. We started at 12 and he still weren't there. So I rang him up and went, hi, mate. He went, yeah, you okay, pal? How are you? I was like, yeah, where are you? I'm in my garden. Lad, we started work. Where are you? Oh, fuck, I thought we started at 5 today. Fucking, I'm in the car. I'm in the car now, driving down. So he owed cakes for that, bless him. He was a good lad, actually. If you listen to this, I know where he is. He was a good lad. There's this one. I had to pay a cake fine for a prisoner I didn't lose. Like, I was not there when the colleague made the decision to take him out of the secured waiting room for a breather, alone with no handcuffs on. I went for a piss and then I hear he'd ran off. I had to pay a cake fine and carry the incident for someone else's stupidity. I don't believe that should be that officer who had to carry that.
That sounds like potentially left the suspect with a probationer, and that the cake fine would be because they left the probationer alone. But you can't not, can you?
Well, you say probationer. You could be a probationer with 18 months service.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't agree with that. I certainly don't agree they should have carried the crime. Unless they've arrested them, then it's like, right, okay, well, you've locked them up, so it's kind of your job. It used to annoy me that, like, you'd be arrested with someone, you'd lock them up, and then your mate would turn around and go, right, my mate's just going to read something out to you now. So, all right, so I'm cautioning them, and I'm picking up the job.
It's so much easier one person arresting.
I don't know what it's like in when you're in your force, Jay, but if we've got, say, for instance, an assault police, if it's obviously someone on my team or myself, our team can't keep hold of that job. It's given to either the next shift coming on or another part of the other borough will take on that job. We don't keep them. So it all depends. It's a funny.
Never that strict in the sense of it has to go to another team. What would happen if, say, if two of you went and one person got assaulted, it'd be the other one who had to carry it. I had a colleague who was a bastard for that because he knew that rule. So what had happened is, like, during the lockup or something, he'd get pushed, you'd lock him up, and then he'd get pushed to go, oh, that's a police assault. And I'm like, it's my job now, is it? You've attended, you've locked him up, and because he's pushed you, you same police. I mean, obviously you can't push cops, not okay, but using it as a loophole to get out of doing work, bit of a cunt trick that.
I was just mentioning on the side of it, like assault police, you say about taking on jobs. I joined a team dealing with investigations. It was like someone gets nicked, or we take on jobs that are ready to be filed to go onto a file, etc. And I took on one that I think in the region of 9 police officers had been assaulted amongst other offences that had taken place. That was fucking interesting, and the amount of work for that was ridiculous. So yeah, all right, one police officer getting assaulted, all right, fair enough. But yeah, that's 9 officers you're chasing for statements.
I actually have quite not a funny one. I guess it's amusing. I don't know about your old force, but it's very rare for CID to take assault police.
That never happened unless the cop had had a jaw broken or something like that. Just didn't happen, and even then,
we had an incident where there was a young individual who'd been rehoused by the council in a 24/7 live-in staff home. So there were 3 live-in staff to deal with this individual, and CCTV in every room. They had complex needs, psychological complex needs, and there became a thing where every single day or every single set, police were getting called to this address because that individual had assaulted the staff or had done something. So Pancake Day ripped the gas hob off the wall and caused a gas leak. And this is a 16-year-old girl. I went and she threw a door at me, ripped it off its hinges, and threw a door at me. I, I've, yeah, I've never had a door thrown at me before, so that sticks with me. Yeah, she ripped off its hinges and threw it down the stairs at me, and then did assault me, whacked me with a bit of the door frame. So that was me. I became a victim of that. So obviously I then didn't retain that job. But because she'd assaulted so many cops, I know that when it went to court, the court listing was like that long of offences of assault police, assault police, assault police, assault police, assault police, criminal damage, assault police. It was just, I've never seen that many offences on one job. It was ridiculous. And because of the complex needs, it got filed.
Oh, sorry, as in you didn't go anywhere?
Didn't go to court. The
Oh,
court
great.
said they weren't fit to stand trial.
Oh, lovely. Well, nothing. I was half expecting they'd get charged with the criminal damage, and then all the police assaults just get ran concurrent. It's fine because no one gives a fuck about if you assault police or not.
No, well, it's a fine, isn't it?
Well, if that. Which then leads us on to our final segment, gentlemen. A lovely, lovely thing to end on called a good news story. So I don't have anything prepared. But do you two gentlemen have some stellar work or an example of exceptional police work or even an incident which you might have attended where you thought, you know what, did a good job there? I'll talk at once.
Happens every day,
Every
doesn't
day.
it?
I don't know about you, CJ. I only really have some ongoing stuff that's negative to talk about. I think me and CJ had an anonymous thing sent in to us, but that'll bring it down. It's a downer one. I don't really have any positives. I guess the positives would be, I think I discussed it on our podcast. Having to deal with the same people over and over and over and over, and then to recently hear that they are keeping their nose clean,
That's good.
that they're doing really well. It's not something that gets praised. Like, they've obviously put in that work because police can't force a young kid to go to school, can they? If they're committing offences, you deal with the offences, but you can't force them to go to school. So to hear that a young person going through a tough time and being a difficult child, to hear they're doing really well is really good.
I like that. I remember going to a care home once and there was a guy there who he was one of the carers. And I mean, he looked like he could frighten a police horse. He was scars all around him, tattoos everywhere.
Mm.
And we got chatting, and he said, I believe he was a heroin addict for about 20 years. And he was a burglar. He'd done more than enough time in prison, in and out of jail. And as a result of eventually, he just thought, I need to change my life. He had a choice to make. Either this is his life and he goes to prison for a long time for something serious and he dies, or he turns his life around. And thankfully, he chose the latter, where he was then a functioning member of society. He'd been clean for a few years. I think he still worked with like probation and stuff every now and then, but they'd kind of taken the foot off him a little bit. And as a result of his background, a lot of the kids where they'd come in where they were dysfunctional, they didn't like the police, they had a lot of complex needs and they were on the verge of entering into criminality, because they had someone who'd been there and done it, and they knew the pitfalls and they knew the things to look out for. He was actually very good at turning young men in particular, like turning their lives around before it got too far. So it does work. Sometimes we can get frustrated if we are dealing with the same people over and over again, because no matter how many referrals we put in, no matter how much we talk to these people, it seems like as soon as we step away, they're doing the same thing over and over again. Sometimes, rarely, but sometimes people do actually reach the point where they go, I want to change my life and I can't do this anymore. And then the ripple effect of that, the officer going, who manages to actually, I don't know, lead to the event which leads them to change their life around, that ripple effects, what happens then is they then help other people who in turn help other people who then don't harm other people. So every officer attending, every referral, it might not be the stone which causes the ripple, but it might be that build-up effect of when that stone is dropped in that puddle, to use the analogy, that then causes the ripple. It can be disheartening and it can be frustrating, but never forget the incredible work which officers do, even if it might not seem like it at the time. I think that's what I'd like to say as a good news story to finish that, because there's too much negativity in public services, too much negativity in policing, too much criticism for people who have never walked the line, have never strapped on a stab vest, have never driven at 100 miles an hour through a busy, a busy city centre where their adrenaline's going through the roof, where they've not seen the family in 4 or 5 days, go into something which God knows what will be at the other end of that car journey. Too much criticism of those people, and not enough commendation for the people who do put the necks on the line, who do sacrifice their time, sacrifice the safety, sacrifice the mental health, sacrifice relationships in the service of other people. What these people do is an amazing thing, and I feel very grateful that I was able to wear that warrant car for as long as I did. Granted, it came to an end, but this is why I think conversations like this are so important, because it not only highlights the difficulties what police and emergency services have to deal with from the people who are dealing with it, it also means that we see the good side of it too. And we see the great work, which is rarely highlighted in the media and in the public space, of the work those people do. So that's what I think I'd like to finish with that.
Lovely.
I should have written that down. That sounded all right, didn't it?
I completely agree.
Is that scripted?
That was really good. I think, do you know what, Jay? I think it's an amazing thing. I think, as you say, what people don't recognize and what people don't see every day is no matter how much of this shit is in the media, like the Panorama documentary, everything that's going on, all the shitstorm that police get, the investigations, the IOPC, no one says, you know what? When I still pick up my phone and I dial 999, I'm still getting police. Those police officers are still going out there, still strapping up their boots, still shoving on their stab vest, still attending those offices and still doing their job.
Despite all the public negativity, yeah.
I think it's amazing.
People who criticise people who would never be able to do what they do. Very easy to sit on the sidelines and criticise, very hard to actually go out and do it. And yeah, and it's the same with like the Met officers now who have to do 12-hour shifts because of all the protests. There's the officers in GMP who have to do the mandatory 12-hour shifts, who barely get a break, barely get a sip of water, barely get to sit down, barely can even go for a piss. The work you do is insane and it's incredible, and it should not go understated at how valuable you are to the safety of everybody who is on this podcast, who listens to this podcast, who follows you guys, who follows me. It's very easy to criticize when you've never experienced that at all. And this is why I like doing this, because it highlights the great work people do. So, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Where can people find you?
Instagram, state_4, Spotify, YouTube, and have I missed one, CJ?
Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, main ones.
Oh, TikTok. We do have TikTok for posting a bit of our short form content, mainly teasers for the next episode. We will be releasing one at some point this week.
Well, I look forward to it. Gentlemen, absolute pleasure. State 4, thanks again.